Walking connects us to the glorious world around us, which we so often lose touch with in our busy everyday lives. It's good for our health and lifts the spirits like nothing else.
That is the most incredible view I've ever seen.
More and more people are feeling the benefits of this simplest form of relaxation.
Walking is about getting fit in body, mind and soul.
Being in nature gives me such a sense of the sacred.
And in this series, we're going to be joining them.
I'm Marine Baig.
And I'm JB Gill.
Come join us as we celebrate the joy, wisdom and beauty to be found not only in Britain's incredible religious spaces.
There's something really special when you enter a place like this.
But in its people as well.
You're really casting everything else away, all the problems of the day.
So important for our well-being.
If you're mindful and spend time in the present moment, then you'll have a much richer life.
We'll be discovering Britain's hidden cultural and historical treasures.
Imagine what this would have been like in its former glory. Unreal.
And unearthing an array of special places that can bring peace and spiritual fulfillment.
Dartmoor is my temple. Dartmoor is my cathedral.
No matter where you live, there's some trail or route you can walk. So put on your walking boots, put your best foot forward,
as we embark on some walks of life.
This time, I'm in the heart of England, Staffordshire, to explore the holy act of pilgrimage by walking one of the country's most ancient cross-country routes. I can't remember the last time I was able to think about nothing else but just appreciate where I am and be in the moment. I'm a Muslim and pilgrimage is intrinsic to my faith. Walking part of this epic 92-mile path called the Two Saints Way, I want to learn and understand how these ancient journeys benefit people of other faiths too.
Pilgrimage is about getting fit in body, mind and soul.
Along the way, I'll be unearthing why this route became so popular, people were prepared to die in the process of walking it.
In the Muslim religion, when we go on pilgrimage, all of it is to do with when you reach the final destination, when you're in Mecca, what you do when you're there. Whereas in this pilgrimage, it's so much more about the journey.
I'll take welcome rest and respite at a secret retreat dedicated to the pilgrims of today.
Can you talk me through the idea behind the gardens?
They're based on the teachings of a Spanish soldier called Ignatian of Loyola.
From there, I'll explore the historic city of Lichfield and discover the role some of its legendary citizens played in the English Enlightenment.
Oh wow, this is it. This is the first edition of the dictionary.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's the highlight of my life as an English teacher.
Before arriving at the breathtaking cathedral dedicated to one of the saints after whom my walk is named, St. Chad.
This is incredible. I feel like I should whisper.
And the site from where he converted pagans of the past.
Isn't it crazy to think how many people must have come here hundreds of years ago and felt like that's the moment they found the true meaning of life, like they were born again?
The Two Saints Way runs 92 miles between the cities of Chester and Lichfield. Today, I'll be tackling the final stage of it, beginning here in the beautiful forests of Cannock Chase. I read up on this place before I arrived, but I have to say, I never expected it to be this peaceful. It's like stepping into another world.
Where I am, these woods feel like they'll go on forever. But Cannock Chase is officially the smallest area of outstanding natural beauty in mainland UK. 26 square miles to be exact.
Just a 30-minute drive from Birmingham city centre, Cannock Chase feels almost Amazonian with its mix of broadleaf woodlands and open land. Historically renowned for mining and ironworks, today it's more famous for mountain biking, rambling, and lots of wildlife. From rare birds, including migrant nightjars and yellowhammers, to adders and lizards. This place was also a royal forest dating back to William the Conqueror, who used to hunt deer around here. I was born and brought up in London, so I'm so used to life being busy and fast-paced and hectic. I don't think I've ever been somewhere so quiet and so still. I can't remember the last time I could hear the wind without the sound of traffic or cars in the background. This beautiful place creates the perfect environment for pilgrims, especially those searching for solace and peace. I even smelt the air being so clean. This place seems so detached from the world we live in and so far away from all the pressures of life. But there's something so uplifting about being in such a beautiful space and being surrounded by nature. It gives you time to calm down and slow down and reflect. I think in our heads sometimes things are magnified, but when you're in such a vast space, you realise that there is a much bigger picture. This particular walk dates back more than 1,000 years. The Two Saints Way is named after medieval saints Chad and Werburgh, both of whom were significant Christian scholars in their lifetime. St Chad brought Christianity to much of the Midlands, then known as Mercia, while St Werburgh founded and ran monasteries across the country. When they were canonised as saints, Werburgh's remains were enshrined at the early Chester Cathedral and St Chad's in Lichfield, and so began pilgrimages between their resting places. One of the many reasons people go on pilgrimages is to honour the dead. Nestled inside the forest of Cannock Chase, this is the solemn but striking military cemetery. My guidebook tells me that this is the final resting place of German, Austrian, and some Ukrainian soldiers. This was created in 1967 so that German soldiers from the First and Second World Wars, who had previously been buried at various sites around the country, could all be brought together. There are nearly 5,000 graves here. It's difficult not to be moved by the sheer number of young men buried here. I used to teach English in a secondary school, and I'm reminded of a piece I used with my students that seems very fitting. There's a poem by Carol Ann Duffy called War Photographer, and I just think of the quote where it says, "The spools of suffering set out in ordered rows." And that's exactly what this is like. There are just rows and rows of identical graves, and the sheer number is shocking and quite horrible. As I walk amongst the seemingly endless rows of the dead, I encounter a group of teenagers tending the graves. They're a mix of both English and German kids taking part in an exchange programme organised by Staffordshire Council and the German War Graves Commission. Hi, I'm Marine. Lovely to meet you. I was wondering if you could tell me what you're doing here, I guess.
It's to work on reconciliation, so we do a lot of work on the graves and help improve the graves, and it helps us connect with the soldiers and connect with history, and feel like we're progressing into the future.
When you're around the graves of the soldiers, what does that mean to you? Or to help clear it up, what does that mean to you?
Paying respect, like making them look pretty again, and I think they would appreciate it, that someone is taking care of them and tries to make everything look nice.
It's surprising how quiet
like it's a group of teenagers, but they're also quiet and well-behaved and serious and focusing?
I think because we know how much it means to be here, we have a lot more respect, and we all know that this is a place where we need to be thinking about the meaning behind these graves and the meaning of what we're actually doing here.
It could have been my great-grandparents who was laying here, so it is impressive, like it's quite overwhelming. But I'm surprised that also the English people like help here, because those people could have killed their great-grandparents, and they're still helping to make the graves look pretty, and I think that's really nice.
At the end of the day, it's their graves, it's their final resting place, and the amount of stuff they've gone through, they deserve somewhere peaceful, somewhere tidy, somewhere nice to have their final goodbye.
The work of these young people and the sentiments behind this cemetery certainly create a beautiful, if bittersweet, atmosphere. The next leg of my journey takes me from the war cemetery through the heart of Cannock Chase towards the site of a long since ruined Iron Age fort called Castle Ring. The well-marked footpaths cut through the dense woodlands and then reveal beautiful open fields with amazing views across South Staffordshire. By the time they reached this spot, pilgrims from centuries ago would already have walked 70 miles from the shrine of St Werburgh, mostly carrying little with them but the shirt on their backs and basic provisions.
It's so strange to think that all these years ago, people took this exact route in the name of God. And at this point, they had been walking for weeks, walking for miles and miles, and they must have been shattered. I can imagine this just being a massive reflection on your life, your actions, just a time to stop and ponder on what the meaning of life really is.
I might not share the Pilgrims' Christian faith, but out here in the calm of this wilderness, I'm beginning to understand why their long journey would have meant so much to them.
It makes me think about my faith and the fact that in the Muslim religion, when we go on pilgrimage, all of it is to do with when you reach the final destination, when you're in Mecca, what you do when you're there. Whereas in this pilgrimage, it's so much more about the journey. It's so much more about the effort you put in on your way, rather than what you do when you actually reach the end destination. The most incredible part of all of this is the fact that as far out as I look, anywhere, all round, I can't see anything else but nature and greenery. There are no roads to be seen. There are no cars to be heard of. There is nothing else. I literally can't see anything else but trees and the most beautiful scenery. I can't even hear anything else. I feel like this is just a really, really beautiful landscape, like something you'd see in a painting rather than in real life. It's stunning, absolutely stunning.
Apparently, as recently as 10 years ago, this route was largely forgotten. And the fact I can now follow it so easily is down to the work of one man, David Potts. An enthusiastic walker himself, he organised the clearing of the Two Saints pathway, raising money to put up signs and negotiating new access with landowners.
Hi, David.
Yes.
Maureen, it's nice to meet you.
Good to meet you. Yeah.
I was wondering if you can tell me a little bit more about the two saints who inspired this pilgrimage. I mean, not all saints have a pilgrimage devoted to them, so there must have been something very special.
Well, first of all, St Chad, he was only the Bishop of Lichfield for 3 years
But the impact that he made in 3 years was really significant. The Archbishop of Canterbury said, listen, you need a horse to get about your big diocese of Mercia. And he said, listen, no thanks, because I believe walking is so important. It's interesting, here we are on the Two Saints Way. But he was a walker. And he said, that's the way that I connect with people. I go about and I talk with people. And so he would do that sort of thing. And people were just drawn to him and to the faith that he was proclaiming. And so many, many people became Christians. So you got this change in Mercia from pagan to Christian. A person like Chad was absolutely key in that.
That is remarkable to think the level of humility you must have to not want to be on the horse, to stay on the same level as people. And I guess that would make him more approachable.
St. Werburgh is not well known in the same way at all. But she was a princess. She was the daughter of a king of Mercia called King Wulfhere. She had many admirers because she was very beautiful, but she sent them all off saying, I don't want any of you, I want to be married to Christ.
That is dedication to be a princess and then to give all of that up. You could live a life of absolute luxury just in the name of your faith.
Yeah.
Despite being the granddaughter of Penda, one of the fiercest and most feared Mercian kings, St. Werburgh wanted only to do good in her life. After her death, women and children in particular found great comfort praying to her. I want to get inside the mindset of people who were so passionate about their faith and so dedicated to the lives of St. Chad and Werburgh, they were willing to travel almost 100 miles on foot in order to express it.
There are a number of reasons. Probably the chief reason was for healing, but also, you know, people with other issues that they wanted to reflect on and go to a special pilgrimage site for healing. Another reason was the idea that after you die, you would have to go to this place called Purgatory for so many years to work off your sins.
Right.
But actually, you could work it off by going on a pilgrimage.
Right.
And
so it's also about repentance.
Yeah, that sort of thing. We know that a number of people were sentenced to pilgrimage for the sin of fornication. We're not given all the details, but this was in the courts near Chester. And so they were told by the courts, you now have to go on pilgrimage to Lichfield and you must take candles with you.
I can't help but feel that it's not the worst punishment to go on this walk.
No, because it was a chance for you to reflect upon your sins and then be welcomed back into your community.
So then how did people survive? Where did they stay? What did they eat?
I think that in some places people just slept out in the open and just found food any which way they could. And often when people went on pilgrimage, of course, they had to make very careful preparations because they knew that it was, in certain places, quite dangerous, so they might not even come back. They might die and be killed or something like that on the journeys. So often people had to make very careful provisions before a long pilgrimage.
Yeah, I've heard that lots of times actually, that people before they go to Hajj, before they
in Mecca,
even if they are unwell, they say they wouldn't mind dying while they're there because you know that if you die over there, then your sins will be forgiven and you will be granted a place in heaven.
Yeah, that's right.
During the Protestant Reformation of the 16th century, Henry VIII banned religious pilgrimages like this one, and they didn't make a reappearance for around 300 years. Just in the last decade, more than 60 pilgrimages have been rediscovered and recreated in the UK. Why are more and more people wanting to do things like this?
Pilgrimage is about getting fit in body, mind and soul. And you know, there's something incredible about it.
Do you know, I couldn't agree more. Even just day-to-day life can be so busy and so hectic, and it's so difficult to switch off when there's so much going on around you.
That's right.
That I guess somewhere like this can benefit anyone just to switch off.
And I think often you need a bigger picture, because actually sometimes the problem is that life has just been about yourself. If you go out into the creation and reflect in a way, that's bigger. You're not just cooped up in that room.
I love
or
that. That's so true. Often, we make things so much bigger in our own heads, and we're so sort of consumed with all our worries and stresses, and it seems like the world's so small. And then when you come to somewhere like this, you realise the world is so big, and there is.
Yes.
It suddenly makes you feel like you'll be okay.
That's right.
When you think about what pilgrimages were used for historically, but how they're still so relevant today, that's just fascinating. People, even today, could really benefit from doing something like this to reflect on their life, reflect on their actions, to, connect with God if that's what you want to do, to get in touch with nature, to meet new people, to see new places. There's so many benefits that I've never really thought about. When I think about the young people I used to teach and teenagers in general, I think often they can be so angry that somewhere like this can be so beneficial for them, just to give them that space to reconnect with themselves. And just 1 mile east, along a bridleway surrounded by majestic ancient trees, is a place that gives young people just such a chance. The Beau Desert Activity Centre is a place for inner city kids to experience this wonderful wilderness through camping and outdoor pursuits. Pete Richardson is the centre's manager. Pete, how do you think young people benefit from something like this?
It's new experiences for a lot of these young people there, Birmingham in the city or Stoke in the city. This is a real opportunity to see the natural world.
There are no school groups here today, but it's still worth a stop to see a long-forgotten slice of local history. The Activity Centre gets its name from the 700-year-old Beau Desert estate, which once spread over much of Cannock Chase and whose grand manor house stood here until 1935.
This is a house, it was a house.
What's the history behind it?
So if we go right to the beginning, so Cannock Chase was a hunting area for the kings, one of the king's hunting areas. Richard I sold it to the Bishop of Lichfield until Henry VIII took it all back during the Reformation. He gave it to the Marquis of Anglesey. The Marquis of Anglesey extended it, and in 1912 they put another wing on it as well, and then kind of ran out of money. They sold a lot of the contents, and at the same time, the Marquis of Anglesey donated the land, everything around it, to the youth of Staffordshire.
He donated it to the youth?
He did, yeah.
That's what an incredible thing to do. In Old French, Beau Desert roughly translates as beautiful wilderness, and Pete suggested that a trip round the back of the ruins will help me understand why. I'm actually nervous and excited to see what I find here. Oh my goodness. Wow. This literally looks like a picture, like someone's drawn it. It's just a million different shades of green and blue. There's so much going on. I can't remember the last time I was able to think about nothing else but just appreciate where I am and be in the moment. This is the first time I felt like that. From here, at the ruins of Beau Desert House, I can see the spires of my final destination, St Chad's Cathedral in Lichfield, almost 6 miles in the distance. It's incredible to think Christian pilgrims of the Middle Ages may have shared this beautiful view. David told me that in medieval times, pilgrims would seek shelter wherever they found it en route. And I soon encounter a resting place for people doing the Two Saints Walk today. It's It's called Reflections, a meditative retreat centre that offers a place for modern-day pilgrims to rest from the road.
John? Hi, I'm Maureen.
Owner John Polhill is on hand to show me around his specially built hermitage.
Oh, thank you. Oh, this is lovely. So people who are doing the pilgrimage, they can come and stay over here?
That's the plan, yeah. So this was designed to be also a meeting room, so the bed folds against the wall.
Yes.
And we can put the chairs out and have meetings in here as well.
So what was the idea behind the hermitage?
There are retreat houses you can go and stay in. They're a bit like hotels and they're quite expensive. My wife was very conscious that lots of clergy, for example, can't afford to go and stay in these places. So we thought we would make a self-catering place where they could just stay. There was a second double garage here and I converted it into this building. We just wanted to make it possible for anybody to come and stay, and there are people who can't afford to pay anything. And we say, well, if you want to help in the garden, that's fine.
What do you get out of it, allowing people who can't afford to do this kind of thing, to allow them to come and stay?
I'd worked in business all my life, and it feels kind of a bit purposeless in a funny way. You do things, do a project, you walk away. And I was keen to do something that had meaning, and having people come and stay who need to get away, and some people really, really need to get away.
A bed for the night isn't all that's on offer here. John and his wife have turned their gardens into a space for contemplation and prayer.
Can you talk me through the idea behind the gardens?
Yes, so they're based on the teachings of a Spanish soldier called Ignatian of Loyola, and he got injured and laid in bed for a long time, and thought about how badly people make decisions.
Oh, right.
And so these are based on the exercises that he created, and they have 5 themes.
St. Ignatius of Loyola was the founder of the Jesuit movement. He devised a set of meditations that encourage people to imagine encounters with Jesus and God in order to enhance and deepen their relationship with them. John and his wife have created 5 gardens inspired by these spiritual exercises.
It might be taking yourself on an imaginary journey where you would meet someone who might help you.
Okay.
Now, I might not share John's Christian faith, but I am intrigued. He's agreed to guide me through one of the meditations that modern-day pilgrims might undertake.
We call this the storytelling place, and I'm going to kind of take you on a journey of a bit of a story. So just make sure that you are sitting comfortably again with your feet on the floor. And okay, you'll probably need to close your eyes. So we're going far from this place, where it's even hotter than it is here today. We're walking up a track. The track weaves about up a hillside, and there are some goats in the bushes just there. So we pass them by and walk on up the hill. As we come up further up the hill, you can see in front of you the path leads to a cave. There's a man. He looks towards you and indicates to you to sit on the bench beside him. And you realise that it's Jesus of Nazareth. And then he says to you, was there something you came here for? Are you looking for something?
John has asked me to contemplate that question for 3 minutes in silence. It's not something I'm used to, but I'm willing to give it a go. St. Ignatius believed God could speak to us through the imagination, and that by envisaging conversations with Jesus, it could deepen faith. Though I'm not sure I'm feeling anything particularly profound, the stillness of my surroundings once again whisks me away, and I find myself lost in thought.
And so you realise that it's time for you to go back, to leave that place and come back here to this garden. And when you're ready, open your eyes and feel yourself here. You were very good because you were completely still throughout.
I was, and I sort of realised near the end that I was completely still.
And that's amazing because people who are not used to it often fidget about, and I was really impressed. Do you want to say anything about what happened in the...
Towards the end, as time was going on, I sort of gave up on trying to think of a story, and I just started listening to the sounds.
Right.
And I think that's when I kind of became really still and then realised that, oh, I was just listening, and that was quite nice.
It's whatever happens to you, and everybody, as I explained to you, I think everybody has different experiences in doing it.
What happened in your story?
What happened in my story, I would ask him hard questions about why are there hard things in the world, and what did you make of being Jesus? What did you make of it? And what did you learn from your life?
That's good questioning.
Yeah, those kind of things I would ask.
I may be on a different faith path to John, but as I prepare for the next stage of my journey, I can definitely now appreciate the impact this kind of contemplation can have. For me, the Ignatian exercise wasn't so much a religious experience. What I did get out of it was a moment where everything just seemed to stop and I could just focus on my surroundings. And I guess that's something everybody could do in their garden for 5 minutes every day. After hiking several miles through Cannock Chase, the landscape changes dramatically. From here, my route takes me towards the city of Lichfield. After the woodlands and epic views, I'm now walking on more solid footpaths and small country roads. I pass by the village of Farewell, home to a long-forgotten Benedictine convent, and come out onto a lane whose name describes the many hundreds of devout pilgrims who walked this road in the past. And my guidebook tells me it's also home to another hidden bit of pilgrim history. It's quite well hidden, but behind these shrubs is a little cave, and legend has it that candle sellers use this as a base to sell candles to the pilgrims. We know that people were sometimes sent on the pilgrimage as punishment for fornication, and they had to carry big, heavy bags of candles on the way. So here's my theory. I think the candle sellers knew this, so they waited here and sold the candles to the pilgrims, who could then pretend they carried them the whole way. Beyond the candle seller's cave are the outskirts of Lichfield, and in just under a mile, I'm in the heart of the bustling Staffordshire city. After the solitude, I'm actually looking forward to the crowds. I think because I've been in so many quiet, beautiful, serene places recently, this feels quite nice. I'm quite enjoying the buzz. My research tells me that Lichfield first grew to prominence because of its position on the pilgrim route. The many hundreds of people converging here to see the shrine of St. Chad brought with them a roaring trade of shopkeepers and tradesmen, all keen to flog their wares to weary travellers. Henry VIII granted Lichfield city status in the 16th century after he chose the town to become one of the 6 which would house his new diocesan cathedrals. Markets and martyrs. Markets and fairs have been held on the square since 1153 when King Stephen granted a charter to Bishop Walter. This place is full of history. Everywhere you go, there's some sort of historical ancient reference. With a population of just over 32,000, Lichfield is the 7th smallest city in England, but it played a vital role at the dawn of the Industrial Revolution. In a period known as the Enlightenment, a group of influential scientists, writers, politicians and thinkers from the region got together to try and devise a new future for their country. This city centre house is where one of Lichfield's most prominent intellectuals lived. Erasmus Darwin, doctor, polymath and grandfather of Charles. His home was a meeting point of a group called the Lunar Society, which was a dinner club made up of the great thinkers of the time. They used to meet here, but only under a full moon, as it made it easier for them to see each other. Led by Erasmus Darwin, members of the Lunar Society went on to change the face of the Midlands. Their discussions led to the building of factories, canals, and in Josiah Wedgwood's case, a pottery empire. And one lunatic, as they were called, Joseph Priestley, even discovered oxygen. The house these men met at every month is now open to the public, and you can visit the medicinal herb garden Darwin planted to create remedies for his patients. But there's one intellectual from here I'm particularly interested to find out about. The creator of the English dictionary, Dr. Samuel Johnson, is considered Lichfield's most famous son, and I have a meeting arranged in the shop that housed the Johnson family business, a business that exists to this day. Hi, Joe.
Yeah.
I'm Maureen. It's lovely to meet you.
Nice to have you here.
It's a lovely little bookshop.
It really is, isn't it? Yeah, it's a really important bookshop to the house as well, because this was the Johnson family's bookshop. So Johnson was born in the room above and was surrounded by these books from the start of his life.
Can you tell me a little bit about his life, about how he grew up and what life was like for him?
Well, for Johnson, obviously he was in the family business, so he was in the home, but he was never really interested in working in the bookshop and binding the books, much more interested in reading them and eventually writing them. He wasn't a very well child. He had some childhood illnesses and things that he really struggled with throughout his whole life. But it didn't stop him from achieving things as a child. So he went to school, he went to Oxford University for a short while. But unfortunately, he didn't actually finish his studies. Money ran out, and he was also really struggling with depression at that point in his life as well. So he came back to Lichfield, and he used to do quite a lot of walking between here and Birmingham, just to really, because he said the vigour of it really helped with his health. So he used to do a day's walk from Birmingham back, and eventually ended up staying in Birmingham for a while, and that's where his writing career really began.
That's incredible. I've heard actually a lot about walking being massively beneficial for mental health. Johnson is obviously most famous for writing the first dictionary.
Yeah.
How did that come about?
He became very well known in the printing and publishing sphere as being someone who had just an extraordinary knowledge of the English language. And that was the reason why he was approached by a group of printers to start working on the dictionary project.
That's quite incredible.
Absolutely, especially because it was effectively a one-man job. He did have a small team of assistants, but it was him leading the project. When you look at other countries around the world, they actually had huge teams of academics working on their dictionaries. So it is quite extraordinary that it's one man's project.
Johnson was famous for his insatiable appetite for language, which he indulged at an early age by reading the books his father sold in this shop. The Earl of Chesterfield paid Johnson just over £200,000 in today's money to complete the first edition of the dictionary. A huge amount, but then it was an epic undertaking. And Johnson's original book is now on display in the small museum upstairs, which recreates the room he lived and worked in. Oh wow, this is it. This is the first edition of the dictionary.
Yeah, absolutely.
Can I have a look?
Yeah, absolutely. We've got it ready to open up if you want to just give me a hand pulling this up.
It's massive. How long must that have taken to put together?
So it was 9 years in total, 2 years in the planning stage and then 7 years in the writing. So he did say it would take 3 originally, so it took longer than he'd expected, but still.
3 times as long?
Yeah.
That's a big chunk of his life.
Well, absolutely, when you think of it that way, yeah, but still a lot of work, really, and 9 years is quite impressive. Other dictionaries took about 40 years in some other countries. So.
Oh, wow. Would he have found it rewarding to have produced this?
I think he found it rewarding at the end. He was very proud of the work, but he found it really difficult along the line. And there is a lovely definition within the dictionary that tells you a little bit about what he thought. That's his definition for the word dull. We can have a look at it if you like.
Yes.
I'll get some gloves on. You can see at the top of this part of his definition for dull, he says, not exhilarating, not delightful. To make dictionaries is dull work.
So he was a witty man.
He was indeed, absolutely, yeah.
When you look at the text of Johnson's dictionary, the font is incredibly small and each description is incredibly detailed, with several definitions listed for each and every word.
There's only about 43,000 words in there in terms of the entries, but each one, I mean, you look at any page, there are several examples of usage, so there's 4 or 5 for each word here. And that's what really stood it out against all the dictionaries that had come before it, was that he really explored the usage in that way.
Yeah.
And what's quite funny is that actually when you get towards the later letters, sort of S onwards, they're much shorter.
You got tired.
Yeah, totally ran out of steam.
Jo says I can get hands-on with this absolute treasure of the English language. This is such a privilege, and given my journey today, there's one particular word I can't resist looking up.
I wonder how Johnson described the word pilgrimage and whether it has the same meaning as it has today. It's the highlight of my life as an English teacher. Okay, pilgrimage. Pilgrim, found it. Pilgrimage, a long journey, travel, more usually a journey on account of devotion. I guess that's what so many people still do till this day. But I guess in modern days, perhaps also just to gain a spiritual connection.
From Samuel Johnson's house, it's just a 300-metre walk to the magnificent Lichfield Cathedral. This is a very important stop for a Two Saints Way pilgrim, because it's here, on this site in 700 AD, that a church was built to house the bones of St. Chad, which had become so sacred to Christians of the day.
What's immediately struck me is the size of it. You can tell straight away that you're going to enter a special place, but more so than that, it seems to convey this sense of power and strength.
In its current form, this cathedral has been here since 1330, when the bishop of the time, who also happened to be Treasurer of England, paid over £1 million in modern money for a more extravagant shrine to house Chad's remains. And the thousands of pilgrims continued to visit.
Here's a little factoid for you. Lichfield Cathedral is the only medieval cathedral in the UK with 3 spires.
I can just imagine what it must have been like for pilgrims who would have travelled over 90 miles to reach this building. They would most likely never have seen any kind of structure as magnificent as this.
This is incredible. I feel like I should whisper. I've never been to a cathedral before, and I didn't really know what to expect when I got inside. It's not my faith. I didn't know if I'd even feel anything at all, but there's something really special when you enter a place like this. There's sort of something in the air, something sacred. It makes me quite emotional. It's not even like there's anyone praying here. It's not like someone's delivering a sermon. There's nothing happening, but just the atmosphere. It's just a bit overwhelming.
There are many treasures in this cathedral, like the Herken Road stained glass dating from the 16th century. It's considered one of the finest examples of painted medieval stained glass in existence. And in 2015, £3 million was spent restoring the 400 panes. Then there's the Lichfield Angel, which is a carved limestone panel that dates from the earliest days of the original cathedral.
Such a grand building. It's not only the size of it, but it's so beautiful. I feel like almost I don't belong here, or maybe I should be dressed differently. If you look at all of the architecture here, all of the stonework, it's depicting religious characters.
Whereas in my faith, if you go into a mosque, you would have none of that. We're not allowed to have pictures and statues of religious figures. And here, they're everywhere as like a reminder of who you're here to worship.
There is one treasure missing. During the Protestant Reformation, St Chad's bones were hidden to stop them from being destroyed. When they were rediscovered in the 19th century, they were reburied in the recently completed Catholic Cathedral in nearby Birmingham. But the spirit of St Chad still lives on here. For me, this has been a real journey of discovery, something that Adrian Dorber, Dean of the Cathedral, might agree is part of what a pilgrimage should be.
What do you think people hope to get out of their visit to the cathedral? Why do you think they come here?
Many are coming with questions. What's life about? A lot of people come here with huge anxieties and preoccupations about the family's health or about bereavement and the general burdenness. And I think this is a place where they can sometimes begin to process some of that. People also come, I think, looking for an experience of transcendence, of what is not everyday and ordinary. And this place is designed to be an extraordinary building.
Yes.
It's meant to be forecourt of heaven.
And do you think pilgrimages still have the same impact, or people still go on pilgrimage for the same reasons in the modern day?
No, I think pilgrimages become wider than any religious tradition. And the journey's become quite a metaphor for our path through life. So when people go on a journey like a pilgrimage, it's a concentrated way, I think, of just working things out, of finding out who they are, of stepping aside from the everyday and asking quite big questions about life. But at its heart, in the Christian tradition, it is about a bit of rigour. You're not living with comfort, so you're laying some things aside. It's about companionship on the journey. It's about getting on with people that you wouldn't otherwise spend time with. It's also about a quest. I think it's trying to find something out. And there's always the encouragement on all pilgrimage routes, no matter under whose auspices they're held, to be generous. Mm-hmm. How can you be generous to the earth? How can you be generous to fellow human beings? How can you spread goodness through this journey you make?
Generosity and the spreading of goodness are something that clearly motivate the people I've been invited to meet next.
Hello.
Hello.
You must be Nicola.
Yes.
It's nice to meet you. What's going on here? What are you guys doing?
We're working on the cross project. It's a massive cross, will be hanged in the middle of the cathedral. It's iconography, it's religious icons, religious pictures, we can say. Itself, it's like, we call it also a door to heaven, where you meet the person in the icon. It's a meeting between you and that holy person in the icon. So an idea was born to have a crucifixion icon in the middle of the cathedral, which is connected to Lichfield and Lichfield Cathedral.
This is all real gold?
This is a real gold. There it's embossed, it looks like jewels around him as the King of Kings.
Yeah.
This icon will depict Christ's crucifixion and ascension to heaven on a unique Lichfield or St Chad's cross.
It was established, this art, from Jerusalem by the first Christians and the saints. And we came all the way from Bethlehem to do this project.
You've come from so far away, and I guess you've done your own sort of pilgrimage to get here.
as Palestinians. As you know, maybe we don't have an airport, so we had to go via Jordan, then to travel to Istanbul and come to, which took us 19 hours to travel. But it was a pleasure, actually. We were so excited to be here and to start this project. For me especially, it's my second project in Lichfield. It's a special place for us. It's so spiritual to work in the cathedral by also hearing the prayers every day and the organ music.
The Bethlehem Icon College, where Nicola is based, was invited by Lichfield Cathedral to undertake this project in 2014. It can take many years for students to feel comfortable creating iconography so sacred, but Nicola has kindly agreed to allow me to take part.
Try to take it from here. You shouldn't be touching the gold.
Okay. It must be very peaceful doing this.
Yeah. And we should pray while doing this and each step in the iconography, so yes. Okay. Good.
Was that okay?
That's okay, see? That's good.
Is it good?
Yeah.
It's a bit wrinkly. Oh, that's better. Thank you. When you say you pray while you do this, what do you mean? You say a prayer, or you ask God for forgiveness, or ask Him for what you want? What do you mean by that?
When you feel you need to talk to God.
Yeah.
So we have two kinds of prayers. We have a group prayer, which we do every morning together.
Yeah.
Before we start work, and we have our own prayer in mind.
Yeah.
We pray. We ask God. We pray for Him. We thank Him. So that kind of prayers.
Okay.
And like when it goes wrong.
Exactly.
Seeing these people at work has really opened my eyes to the fact this cathedral isn't just a shrine to pilgrims of the past, but a building that still has something to offer anyone, Christians and non-Christians, who visit it today. The cathedral was absolutely beautiful, but what I found most interesting was that people like Nicola still come here from all around the world for their faith. Surprising as it may seem, the Two Saints Way doesn't actually end at St Chad's Cathedral. Before I call it a day, I have one final stroll to the Lichfield suburb of Stowe. The final few steps of my walk take me past this lake, called Stowe Pool, towards a much smaller and less assuming church, which is also named in honour of St Chad. So there's trees all around us, and then every now and then you just see a spire in between them. Oh, I think, that's St Chad's Church. It's a lot smaller than I expected. It's a lot smaller than the cathedral. But actually, it still looks really special. It looks really beautiful, actually. St Chad lived a humble and pious life in this area, and in the 11th century, 400 years after his death, this church was built to commemorate him. This is so much simpler and more humble compared to the cathedral. But I can imagine it's easier to feel a connection with God when you're in a more intimate space like this. But the reason this site remains the climax of the Two Saints Way isn't inside this church, it's in the yard outside. Alongside his remains in the cathedral, this simple well is what all those pilgrims were willing to march the 94 miles from Chester for. This is perhaps the holiest surviving site associated with the saint. It's here that he was said to have baptized the pagans of this part of the country, converting them to Christianity. It's a humble end to the pilgrimage, but an intriguing one.
Reverend Rod.
Yes, welcome.
I'm Maureen. It's so nice to meet you.
And you, welcome to St Chad's Well.
I've heard so much about St Chad on this journey, and this is the site where he used to baptise his converts?
That's what we believe, yeah. We believe he lived somewhere just in the vicinity here, and here was a spring well of water bubbling up, and there he used that water to baptise, yeah.
So how does it feel that you have the responsibility of looking after this site?
It's a bit awesome, really, because, you know, it's very important to the history of this whole part of England, really, and it's a privilege, and to be a kind of guardian of a well. It's an unusual job description.
The thing that I keep hearing over and over again about St Chad is that he was someone who was known to bring people together. Does that ring true with you?
He was a peaceable man. What we know about him from the old records is that he liked to make peace with people. He built bridges. He connected people with God and with other people, and was very into reconciliation.
Then I guess his legacy and the message he was trying to bring to the world is still very relevant today.
Very relevant, because he was a unifier. He brought people together, he integrated people, and let's be honest, there's a few divisions in the world today between nations, between classes, all sorts of things, and Chad is a figure that's very relevant.
I've been learning about and doing the Two Saints Way pilgrimage. There are two saints, so I've heard a lot about St Chad, but I feel like St Werburgh's story is, you know, equally as incredible. So why do you think it is that she's often not as spoken of?
I think Werburgh was a really important figure. She was one of the leading women leaders in the church. She started a monastery, and she's very well known within narrow circles. Now, whether that's because she didn't have the public role that Chad had, different society, different roles for men and women, but in her age she'd be very influential. She shaped a lot of people's lives, educated a lot of people, taught people, and that's why she's commemorated at the other end of the Two Saints Way in Chester.
It's amazing to think these are the same sacred waters where St Chad worked, practiced his faith, and helped others realise theirs.
The significance of this place isn't in the way it looks. The significance is what this place means to those thousands of people who walk miles and miles and have been walking for hundreds of years just to get here. Isn't it crazy to think how many people must have come here hundreds of years ago and felt like that's the moment they found the true meaning of life, like they were born again. This is where it happened.
For me, this walk and pilgrimage has been profound, reflective and invigorating all in one. It's taken me through incredible countryside, into stunning buildings, and taught me about other religious practices I now feel I can relate to and understand that little bit more.
The journey that I've completed has a great religious history, but what I've realised is that experiences like this don't have to be done for a specific faith. We can all benefit from being outdoors, immersed in nature, because that gives you time to reflect on your life and to reconnect with yourself.